So, I want to talk today a little bit about the death of small town America. This idea has been kind of sitting in my mind for a while, and I've talked to a few people around town about this. Uh, I think it really started formulating within my mind when I heard that Ireland Bank was closing down in Downey. And while I was working at Ireland Bank over in Downey, I the bank was right across the street from the closed down supermarket that hadn't been open for a while. And that got me thinking, well, Malad actually had 3 or 4 grocery stores um, previously. And when I was a kid, there were 2, and now there's just 1, forming in some ways a monopoly of groceries within Malad. I'm perfectly fine with Thomas Market. I don't think they should be taken to court for monopoly stuff or anything. That'd be ridiculous. But it does really make you wonder why in the 70s and 80s were there more grocery stores than there are now? Are there less people in Malad than back then? I think it's been fairly static for a long time. And again, I could be wrong on that. I haven't looked into the census data to see how the population of Oneida County has changed, but I'm pretty sure it's fairly static, if not grown a little bit, which would mean we shouldn't have less grocery stores. We should have more grocery stores. And so why does it look like Downey is dying? And why have so many other small towns in America kind of just dried up and blown away? What happened to the ghost towns? That in my mind, the reason why the ghost towns dried up and blew away, as many have said, is that they lost the core of why they were there. A lot of them were mining towns. Once the mine ran dry, what was the reason for being there anymore? I heard about a major town in Tennessee, I think it was, that had all sorts of manufacturing in it, and there were like 5 or 6 manufacturing businesses in this town. But when regulations started really ramping up and businesses decided that it was less expensive to just move overseas, all of those businesses moved overseas, leaving empty factories and a town that had basically nothing there. And because of the lack of work, it seems like the increase in crime and drug use skyrocketed. An idle hand is the devil's tool, I guess you could say. So that's all been percolating in my mind, thinking, well, I really care about Malad. I care about Oneida County. I don't want Oneida County and Malad to die. And I don't think that it will in the long run, but I also would prefer the small town feeling that Malad has traditionally had to stay here. I like small town, tight-knit communities. So in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you could go back to the Great Depression. Malad was mainly agricultural-based community. And because it was a mainly agricultural-based community, they had a certain income structure. The farmers would grow the crops. The farmers would sell those crops to the community, and then into the greater economy. And from those funds, the farmers could go to the store, go to the supermarket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Go to the tractor store, which Malad had once upon a time. go to the used car lot, or I think it was actually a new car lot even. Malad had a lot of, we had a ZCMI. We currently have a couple banks, but we had a lot of things in Malad that people wanted for amenities. But as society has changed, and as Malad has somewhat more from an agricultural community predominantly into more of a commuter town, then it seems like things have devolved slightly. We're still trying to have that tight knit community, but because we're not interacting each other, going to each other's stores, helping each other with their farms, everything else, we're not communicating with each other more. So that tight knit community seems to be slightly falling apart. So what can be done? Well, let's go back. Why has it been changing? Let me give you some stats that I pulled up, and these I just grabbed some numbers that I could find. So these are numbers from 1975. In 1975, the average price of barley was $2. Actually, that might. Let me skip that one because my notes on that are not very good. Wheat, 1975 was $3.70 per bushel. In 2005, which again, that's almost 20 years ago, it was $3.22 a bushel. With inflation, it should have been $13 per bushel. Corn, $2.89 per bushel in 1975, and it actually dropped to $2.11. If you adjust for inflation, it should have been $10 a bushel. Beef in 1990, so a little bit different time, $78.50, and in 2005, $145. I think that's per hundredweight, maybe. I think so. If you adjust for inflation, it should have bumped up to $285. So that means farmers are having to work more for less if they're going into the standard market. Now, a lot of farmers have started trying to go into more niche markets, farmers markets where you're able to sell directly to the people, and in some ways cutting out the middleman of the grocery store, so that all of that savings of no middleman can be split between the producer, the farmer, and the consumer, the person purchasing the whatever. So that helps. Let me actually pull up something. Just a second. Okay, what I am trying to find, I'll just pull up the stage. This is supply and demand. There we go. So as the price raises, the demand drops. So if I'm trying to sell an ear of corn for $100, I might have one person buy it if they're insane. And if I get that one person to buy it, then I'll make a lot of money on that single ear of corn. If I set my price at a penny per ear of corn, a smart person would buy out my entire stock and then probably raise the price and sell it again for something higher. Could I function as a farmer undervaluing my products that much? No. So there needs to come an equilibrium for which the farmer can actually make money to survive, and the consumer can get the proper amount so he doesn't feel cheated. And the less of a supply there is, the greater the demand there will be. So what happens when the market is flooded with goods from somewhere else where it's a lot more plentiful? All of a sudden, the demand drops, meaning the price also drops. If you also factor in what happens if all of a sudden there's a lot of expenses that the farmer has, regulations, permits that he needs to purchase or that he needs to get, other things like that. Because his expenses have gone up, that means the supply curve needs to be adjusted. All of a sudden, the price isn't here, the price is up here. So all of a sudden, the quantity drops. And this, if the cost is pushed up to here because of expenses of whatever they might be, then all of a sudden less people are going to buy because they're priced out of the market. Or they'll buy less because they just can't afford to get as much as they were previously wanting to get. And then with that higher cost, the consumer, they either purchased less or purchased the same amount, and now they can't buy something else with that money that they were planning on not paying for that item. So that's basically lost revenue for the farmer, lost quantity for the consumer, and that is soaked up into whatever expense the farmer might have had. And usually that is, or within economics, when I went through my economics class, that was signified by taxes. The more the tax is, the less the quantity will be, or the higher the price will be. And that portion within there is just, what is it called? A market shortage? I can't exactly remember. But there comes a problem there. Once the expenses get so high that no one's going to buy, then all of a sudden that farmer goes out of business because he cannot get enough money for the product that he's trying to produce. He's losing money for every widget that he produces. And if you add on top of that, just the annoyance factor, how many people want to start a business nowadays? Because if you start a business, you need to worry about zoning, you need to worry about permits, you need to worry about taxes, you need to worry about paying your employees unless you're doing it all by yourself. You need to worry about possibly being sued, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole myriad of things that could prevent someone from wanting to start a business. But if they don't start that business, then they cannot provide that function or that product to the community. And if they don't provide that function or that product to the community, then the community suffers from lack of product or service. If that product or service is needed by that community, that means the community would need to go outside of the community to get that. They'd need to go to Logan or Pocatello or whatever. And with that comes added expense for the community, because there's a time expense, there's a fuel expense, et cetera, et cetera. So what can be done? Well, either the farmer, let's just go with farmers, if either the farmer needs to raise his price, which the community eventually won't stand for. They cannot pay an exorbitant amount of money for a product, or he needs to sell less. Those are the two options that he has. But something the community can do is drop the expense. How can the community drop the expense though? Well, the county commissioners or the city council or wherever the farmer is, they do have the ability to waive permits or waive permit fees, waive the need for permits altogether, which would help with time expense and monetary expense right there. They could waive taxes on farming ground, let's stick specifically with farming ground. They could waive all taxes on farming ground, which all of a sudden would drop the expense again on the farmers. The farmers could try and increase their income through going direct to the community, like a farmer's market. I love that idea. However, that would mean the farmer would need to learn how to market his own things instead of just sending it into the current supply lines, which the annoyance factor kicks in. How many farmers want to have to deal with marketing their own food when it's so much easier to just send it into the standard supply line? A lot less money for the farmer, but a lot less annoyance as well. So I can completely understand that. So as the farmers are contemplating, I've got all of these expenses. I need to make this much more to pay for the expenses and survive. There have been a lot of farmers that go, well, my income on the farm doesn't exceed my expenses for the farm. So at least some farmers have decided to turn the farm into a hobby farm. In other words, they're going to work for Hess Pumice, they're going to work for Nucor, they're going to work for Hill Air Force Base. They're becoming the commuters, and then in their spare time, when they're not making money for their family, they're trying to farm and keep that farm going. That's pretty difficult for people to have a 40 to 80 hour a week job and then farm on the side. I wouldn't want to do it. I prefer having a little bit of free time to spend with the family, go on adventures, et cetera, et cetera. So that puts the farmers in a real bind. Do they sell the farm at that point? Well, that makes it really difficult, because if you're trying to sell the farm, who's going to buy the farm? Another farmer that doesn't have the money to buy the farm? A developer? That is kind of difficult as well, for various reasons. A philanthropist like Bill Gates that is the largest the largest farmland owner in America at this point, even though he says we need to stop farming, we need to live in the pod and eat the bugs. It makes for a difficult situation for the community, everybody says that they want the farmers to succeed, but what are we doing to make sure the farmers can succeed? Are we trying to purchase directly from the farmer? Are we making it easy for the farmer to go, okay, well, I have these animals. I can't really sell by the pound because then I'll go to jail, because only USDA inspected beef can be sold by the cut. If a farmer wants to sell beef to an individual, they need to sell the live animal to the individual, and then the individual can go to a custom butcher shop and have the animal butchered. What a lot of farmers have done is try and sell portions of the animal. So sell the cow by the quarter or by the half. And then he needs to try and figure out, okay, Jim gets a half, Tom gets a half, Tony gets a quarter, Phyllis gets a quarter. Trying to get that all married together, again, kind of difficult. And if he's working 40 to 80 hours a week and trying to bring in the hay and trying to get that figured out, it becomes really difficult again for the farmer to do all those things. So what can we do? I'm really happy to see that we've started doing farmers markets here in Malad, and there's a natural food fair that's going to be happening in September that I'm really excited about. I think those are good steps back to having a thriving community where we don't have to be just a commuter community. I would prefer that we get a little bit tighter knit again, have things like Renaissance fairs, heritage festivals. I like the Welsh Festival. If we're able to do more things like that and shop locally and produce locally, try and limit the amount of expenses that are happening within the community so that people can actually produce and make money to survive by doing those things, it would make our community better. And I could probably delve into certain specific parts of this and go on for hours and hours, but I don't know how many people would want to listen to me talk about this for hours and hours and hours. However, I would love to have a conversation with someone about this, record it and share it with the community. If you would like to get on camera with me and have a conversation, please let me know, and we can get on and we can have a conversation about this, see what other people's opinions are of this, because I'm just one person and I may be way off base on many of the things that I've said. But yeah, hit me up, let me know. We'll get something together, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.